Welcome everyone, a guy trying here, and today we're going to take a look at building a deck for Afanas Senka in Altered TCG. After this deck guide is finished, I'll now have an early meta guide out for a hero in every faction. I still have plans to make guides for the remaining heroes, but this will complete my first cycle, so let's get into it. Afanas Senka are an Yzmir hero whose ability reads, when you play a spell, target character you control gains 1 boost. In the most basic sense, a hero's ability is designed to equal 1/1/1 per turn on average. Kojo, Yzmir, and Tasia are the simplest to see this in, but Basira, Nevenka, Sabotage, and Waru also have the same basic principle. The fact that Afanas Senka are not restricted to activating their ability once per turn makes their ability one of the strongest in the game on paper, the weakness of it coming from the way you have to build the deck in order to capitalize on it. The balance of characters and spells is incredibly important and will be the thing you'll need to focus on the most. Let's start with our deck core. These are the cards I think should be included in every iteration of the deck and should be the baseline for any list. Once we have the core constructed, we'll move on to some options to fill in the remaining slots that can be changed to fit your playstyle or whatever uniques you may own. I'm going to start this core off a bit differently than I have in the past because I think there's an important decision we need to make, and it's based around these two cards. Kadigiran Mage-Dancer is the perfect card for our deck as he mimics our hero's ability, giving us extra value whenever we play a spell, and Magical Training is a cheap spell that allows us to activate our ability while still allowing us to keep card advantage. You'll want 3 of each of these cards in your deck, but you'll want to play with the rarity ratios to see what feels best for you. Rare Mage-Dancer will put us more into a targeted value deck, where we try to focus on keeping Mage-Dancer around to draw cards, but leaves us more vulnerable to removal. Opting for Common Mage-Dancer puts us more into a tempo-oriented deck, trying to take expeditions when we can, and be more okay with losing our characters throughout the days. Rare Magical Training works well in this instance because the lower cost fits better into our cost curves throughout the game, and lets us get multiple boosts in a day. Feel free to mix the rarities within these cards too. I would say to have 3 rares and 3 commons, but they don't all have to be of one card or the other. Next we have our main buff targets, Shroom and Bravos Bladedancer. Both of these characters allow us to gain additional value off our boost through Anchored and Seasoned respectively. These characters will be the easiest way to run away with a game, but be aware of removal. Stacking either of these to incredible heights is tempting, but you can easily lose a game by forcing too much onto them. Kadigiran Alchemist and Studious Disciple are our basic bodies. We will use them to pass priority and position ourselves better. While most other stat-based hero abilities are forced to be upfront with the expeditions that are improving, Kojo and Yzmir being locked to specific expeditions, and Tasia applying to the first character played, Afanas and Senka allow us to play around our opponent a bit more. Characters like Alchemist and Disciple allow us to get bodies on the board, but decide later where we want our boosts to go. Kadigiran Alchemist is a fair statted card from hand that can help us combat lanes, and is a strong early game card, but we mainly want his 1 cost from reserve later on. Studious Disciple always costs 1, and has the upside of having a support that reduces our spell costs. Which brings us to our core spells. Helping Hand is a premier spell in this deck. It's cheap, it doesn't have fleeting, gives a boost, and helps us recur our characters. Our ideal targets will be Mage-Dancer, Anchored, or Seasoned characters, but there are plenty of times I found myself using this on a more basic body, just so that I'll have some form of buff target the following turn. Off You Go is a great tempo card that helps us with board presence, but feels awful to play from reserve. And finishing out our core, we have our Sabotage options. The ratio of these cards will depend on how the rest of your deck shapes up, using these to add more characters or more spells where needed. Both feel good in the deck, and will definitely want a good amount of Sabotage to lower our opponent's value. And that's our core. You should be able to scan the QR code on the screen to take you to my copy of the deck core on Altered TCG. That way you can duplicate and already have the base when you start to finish the deck for yourself. Note that the core has 3 of both common and rare versions of Mage-Dancer and Magical Training, so you'll have to adjust those for the deck to be legal. We'll now move on to our options packages. Our More Targets package has Red and Spindle Harvesters, which function as second sets of Bravos Bladedancer and Shroom. If you want to go full-on Seasoned or Anchored in your deck, feel free to swap these into the core for their opposite counterpart. Our Recursion package helps with the fact that our non-fleeting spells cost more from reserve. We can add spells back to our hands for more value, while also giving us fair statted bodies if we decide to play them on the board. Cards from our Removal package can be slotted into the deck to help us combat whatever situations we might find ourselves in. Banishing is unconditional removal, Intimidation is cheap to help us win expeditions, and Kraken's Wrath is the only go-wide removal in the game currently. Our Board State package helps us control expedition progress throughout the game. Meditation Training is straightforward enough, but Beauty Sleep has some interesting applications. Beauty Sleep works great to target our own characters, most often rare Mage-Dancer, if we are either losing an expedition or if our opponent concedes a lane where we have overcommitted. And of course, you can target an opponent for a crucial advance. Baba Yaga is just card draw with a body. The fact that she's cheaper from reserve can help us keep up in characters as the game goes on, and the rare is even overstated from reserve. She basically just helps with the overall consistency of the deck, helping with card advantage and having a buff target if we need it. And finally, we have Small Step Giant Leap. We can run out of steam in this deck if the game goes long enough, so this card can be great to finish out games, netting you that final advance. It's utterly useless before that point, but I'd be lying if I didn't say it's made me win games I would have otherwise lost. Which brings us to uniques. Good uniques can make this deck feel night and day different, so we're going to try to target uniques more than other decks might. We're looking for cards that have passives when we play a spell, return spells to our hand, or gain some sort of bonus when they are boosted. Good characters to look at are Reds, Spindle Harvesters, and Sneezer Shrooms, as they can open up rare slots while getting you bonuses. For my uniques, I don't really have much to choose from. I've chosen these three, but I've been tempted to just opt out of uniques. Atlas can Sabotage when boosted, but her 4 cost makes it hard to actually effectively pull off. My Ortis Attorney has some good stats, but I don't often use her from reserve ability, and because the deck is trying to push advantage in the early game, I often don't get great effect out of her passive. My Monolith Legate can help me clear out my reserve to get some boost, but still, it doesn't feel great. With that all done, this is my finished deck list. The QR code should take you to the deck on Altered.gg, but there's also a link in the description. Afanas and Senka leave a player with a lot of fun avenues to play turns and can feel very satisfying when done correctly. The sequencing can feel weird at times, since you always want to have a character on board before playing any spells, but you do have freedom after that. You are a weird mix between going wide and going tall because you are playing multiple cards in a turn, but boosting the few characters you have on board. This makes it hard to play into Warrune Mac, as Robin Hood slows you down, but you don't get the same safety that a deck like Traced and Rossum gets from the lack of good multi-target removal in the game currently. Because of these things, Afanas and Senka feel like they have a weird place in the meta, even though they can pull off some great games. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you found this helpful in some way. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe, but if you made it this far, just know I'm happy you stayed with me this long. This has completed my first leg of the early meta deck guides, now having one for each of the factions. As I said earlier, this doesn't mean I'm finished with the series, but I might jump around a bit more and not be as rigid in which heroes I choose next. I want to thank you all for being patient with me as I get these out, and know that I do want to get to whatever hero you are hoping I get to, I just don't know when I will actually get to them. That's all for now, but I hope we see each other again.